Good morning, siblings. It's Farmer Dar here out in the backyard garden, and today I'm going to do my best impression of Barefoot Contessa. We're going to share lettuce and chard and maybe some pak choi bouquets with our friends and neighbors. I have some beautiful big bowls, and usually what I do is I harvest a little bit, throw it in a bowl, and hand it over to my friend or neighbor. And then a few days later, the bowl comes back. One thing I can say about my friends and my neighbors, they return bowls. That is a huge, wonderful gift. So I have actually handed out my best 13-quart stainless bowls several times to several different people, and they've always returned. So thank you, friends and neighbors. That's wonderful. But I noticed I only have so many bowls, and that's really been limiting how much I've been sharing. So I have a lot more to share than we can possibly eat, and I don't want it to go bad. I want my friends and family to benefit from this great harvest that we're having. So after a few days of thinking through this scenario, I've come up with a way to hopefully share veggies with my neighbors in a way that feels classy, like a stainless bowl, but is actually quite disposable on their end so that they don't have to worry about returning a bowl to me. Let me show you what I've come up with. Here is our first bed of lettuce that you saw me plant a little earlier this year. I'll put a link up in here somewhere so you can see. And we have been harvesting from this bed. You can see an occasional bare spot where we've taken a head of lettuce so other heads of butter crunch lettuce can grow larger. I have set out what we need to make some fresh produce bouquets for my friends and neighbors. So over here I have some butter crunch lettuce. I have some Swiss chard. Over here I have some fancy wrapping paper, some water, paper towels, various items to hold the bouquet together, and some stationery and a calligraphy pen. I mean, an ink pen. I'll start with a large piece of parchment paper, and I'm going to wrap this up like a cone. So I'll grab some chard, and I have that chard sticking out the top a little bit. Chard cooks down quite a bit, so a pretty big bunch is necessary to share with your friends. So I'll pull some charred leaves together, a nice bunch of them. Notice I'm putting the stems sort of together here. There's a reason. All right, that's about a third of the chard. Get a little bit of paper towel. Wet the paper towel. Wrap it around the chard. Now I'm going to grab one of the butter crunch lettuce and I'll rip off some of the bottom leaves that are a little more unsightly, but I'm going to leave the core. And I'll set the butter crunch lettuce down. I'm going to try tape, but yesterday tape did not work so well on parchment paper. So as backup, I got some staples. So I'm folding the bottom up a little bit, just in case that water starts dripping. Got a bit of a cone shape. Maybe this tape will work better with parchment paper. Yesterday's tape did not work well at all. And today's tape does not work well either. All right, so I came prepared for that to happen. Uh-oh. So I came prepared for that to happen. Uh-oh. Since the tape does not stick well to parchment paper, I will rely on this tape to stick well to tape. All right, tape stuck perfectly fine to other tape. Swiss chard and butter crunch lettuce, and I'll just tuck it in there. Maybe they'll see it, maybe they won't, and voila. Now I can set this on their porch in the shade, and they can come outside and get it. So porch drop off. They can come outside and get it when they feel ready to do that. Let's make a couple more. We now have 3 bouquets and we are almost ready to share with neighbors and friends. All right, everybody, I'm just about ready to go make a few porch drop-offs. Now, the one thing that I needed before I should go and approach one of my friends and neighbors' porches is I needed to put on a cloth mask. As you can see, I have a homemade cloth mask that Katy made for me, and it's fogging my glasses up. But no problem, I can always adjust my glasses so that they get a little less fog, and I can grab by the strings and make some adjustments so that I'm not touching the front of my face mask. Now, I'm going to go ahead and drop this face mask down so that I can talk to you a little bit about why I'm wearing this face mask. First off, I want to make sure you understand this is not PPE. The cloth masks can be anywhere from like 30% to 70% protection, and I've seen some claims that some masks are even higher. So when I'm thinking about my chances of giving germs to others and making them sick, if I could drop that by 30 to 70%, Why the heck wouldn't I? That's just good pro-social community love. All right, now for your dash of science, there's a recommendation out there that you don't want to have a growing number of cases. In fact, some recommendations even suggest 14 consecutive days of less than one-to-one spread for cases. There's this thing called the R naught. It's basically a mathematical measure of reproduction of, in this case, viruses being transmitted from one individual to another. This value is a measure of how contagious a germ, in this case a virus, is. Okay. Now's a great time to stop and explain this R naught idea with a quick little primer, very oversimple, and a diagram. It's a basic reproduction number. It's a mathematically modeled value that is dependent on the assumptions of whatever the researchers are observing in a population. This particular number for this particular infection represents a rate of transmission from an index person to subsequent other people. An R naught of 1, or transmission rate of 1, means an infection is holding steady in a population. For every one index person that is positive for an infection, that means one other person is being infected by that person. Now, of course, this is mathematically modeled. It doesn't mean every single person is each individually infecting one other person. It just means typically in a population that is the ratio. And so the infection rate is holding steady. Not dropping, not rising. An R naught greater than 1, or transmission rate greater than 1, means that for each person with an original infection, they are likely to transmit that infection to more than one other person. So in my little diagram up here, I show an index individual in red, and then it looks like 6 other individuals infected by that original individual. It would take a particularly virulent strain and a lot of access to people to maintain an R naught of 6. So that would be incredibly high, and that would be an epidemic that is accelerating. For an R naught that is less than 1, or a fraction of 1, this means that index people, original people, are transmitting to fewer than one person on average. This here is when an infection in a population will de-accelerate, and it is actually what many experts are asking for communities to do for up to 2 weeks before they take seriously resuming normal activities. Now let's look at some graphs where time is on the x-axis and number of cases is on the y-axis. Here in the graph for South Korea, we see that there is a very steep acceleration phase followed by a very steep deceleration phase, then a little bit of a leveling off before more deceleration. It takes an R naught greater than 1 to accelerate upward. It takes an R naught less than 1 to accelerate downward. And then where it holds steady, that R naught might have been closer to 1. Here's a similar graph for Canada with time on the x-axis and number of cases on the y-axis. As you can see, Canada is spending quite a bit of time with an R naught greater than 1. I do not know the exact R naught, but I do know the number of cases are accelerating. And here is the U.S. graph with time on the x-axis and number of cases on the y-axis. At some point after March 12th, there was a very high acceleration phase where the R naught had to have been more than 1. And then there appears to be a little bit of a drop and then kind of bumpy, almost leveling, so the R naught might be closer to 1. With a high number of cases, though, an R naught of 1 is not desirable. Now for a slightly different graph, we still have time on the x-axis, but this time the y-axis is tracking the infection growth rate, or the R naught. And right now in Missouri, our R naught is close to 1.08, which is a slowly growing state of affairs. And you can see that the R naught has been calculated in the past where we've had greater transmission rates, and now it's lower. The R naught is a great number to monitor as you're considering how safe a community is for travel. In general, you want to see an R naught less than 1 to know that cases are on the decline. It's also an indication of how seriously a community is taking the hazards of infection, because it is through our behaviors that we can, in fact, address the R naught and bring down the number of cases in an area. If for some reason I have the virus, and it's possible, asymptomatic carriers are a thing, and I keep my mask on and keep most of my germs to myself, what that's going to do is it's going to reduce the possibility of my spreading this virus to another person. Not 100%, but why don't I just eke out any amount I possibly can? Because if we can reduce how contagious this virus is, we might just be able to do some things that we haven't been able to do for the last month or so. So it's time for me to don my mask and go make some porch drop-offs. See you in a bit. Whew. Finished the job. And I have my bowl without delay.